Picture two men, worlds apart, forced into a car together for 8 long weeks. One is a rough-talking bouncer from the Bronx. The other, a brilliant pianist who lives like royalty. Neither one trusts the other, and neither one has any idea what's coming. It's 1962, and Tony Lip needs work. He's just lost his job at the Copacabana nightclub. He's the kind of man who solves problems with his fists first and questions later. Loyal to his wife, loyal to his neighborhood, but not exactly known for keeping an open mind. Then a strange offer arrives. A doctor wants to hire him as a driver. Not just any doctor. Don Shirley is a world-class musician, and he lives above Carnegie Hall itself. Tony walks into that apartment expecting nothing, and finds a throne room. Don Shirley sits above his instruments like a king, dressed in silk, surrounded by African art. He's cultured, precise, and utterly composed. Tony is loud, blunt, and completely unfiltered. It should never work. But Don needs someone tough for where he's headed next. He's about to tour the Deep South, and the Deep South does not welcome men like him. Before they leave, Tony's handed a strange green book. A guide, listing hotels that will actually let Don stay. Restaurants that won't turn him away at the door. It's survival, printed on paper. Tony doesn't understand yet just how necessary that book will become. The first days on the road feel almost comedic. Tony eats with his hands, Don winces. Don corrects Tony's grammar, Tony rolls his eyes. Two stubborn men, circling each other warily. But somewhere past the Mason-Dixon line, the mood in the car begins to shift. The polished restaurants stop welcoming Don. The nice hotels suddenly have no vacancies. Tony starts to see, for the first time, the invisible walls Don has lived behind his whole life. In one town, Don is expected to perform for a wealthy white audience in a beautiful mansion. They applaud his music like he's the finest talent they've ever witnessed. But when he needs to use the bathroom, they point him toward an outhouse in the yard. Tony explodes with rage at the humiliation. Don simply endures it, silent and dignified. That's the pattern that repeats, town after town, venue after venue. Adored on the stage, and treated like a stranger the moment he steps off it. One night, in a run-down motel, Tony finds Don utterly alone, drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. For the first time, the mask slips. Don isn't performing anymore. He confesses something raw, that he doesn't fully belong anywhere. Too refined for the black communities he grew up distant from, too black for the white world applauding him. He lives suspended between two worlds, accepted fully by neither one. Tony starts to understand the weight Don carries every single day of his life. Then comes a night in a piano bar, somewhere off the beaten path. Don sits down and starts playing something loose, something joyful, completely unlike his concert repertoire. For a few minutes, surrounded by strangers, he seems truly, genuinely free. But freedom is fragile on this trip. Danger is never far behind them. In one town, police stop the car after dark, enforcing a sundown law most towns still hide. Tony refuses to be pushed around and ends up throwing a punch at an officer. Both men land in a jail cell, and it takes a phone call to Washington to get them out. Tony realizes the doctor's connections run higher than anyone in these small towns could imagine. Later, in another town, Don is arrested again, caught in a moment meant to be private. Tony bribes the police, gets him released, and never once judges him for who he is. It's a quiet turning point. Loyalty forming somewhere beneath all that friction. As the tour rolls on, letters home become a strange kind of bridge between them. Tony struggles to write to his wife with any real feeling. Don starts ghostwriting the letters for him. Each one grows more tender, more poetic, more alive than anything Tony could write alone. His wife, back in the Bronx, begins to fall in love with these letters, not knowing the truth. Meanwhile, the tour pushes deeper into hostile territory, and the pressure never seems to ease. Every town brings a new version of the same painful lesson. Talent and elegance mean nothing to men who've already decided how to treat him. The tour is scheduled to end with a final concert on Christmas Eve, deep in the South. But that final night brings the ugliest moment of the entire journey. Don is barred from eating in the very restaurant hosting his own performance. They tell him he can play the piano for their guests, but he cannot sit and dine among them. Something inside Don finally breaks. Years of swallowed dignity reach their limit. He refuses to play. He simply stands up and walks out into the night. Tony follows him, and for once, doesn't try to talk him out of anything. Instead, they find a small, run-down bar filled with black patrons, warm lights, real laughter. Don sits at the piano, uninvited, unannounced, and just starts playing. No formal suit required, no polite audience holding its applause until spoken to. For the first time in the entire trip, he plays purely for the joy of it. The crowd doesn't see a curiosity or a hired performer. They see one of their own, shining. It's the moment the whole journey has been quietly building toward. With the tour finally behind them, they begin the long drive home for Christmas. A heavy snowstorm blankets the road, and exhaustion finally catches up to Tony. Don, unexpectedly, takes the wheel himself, letting his driver rest for once. It's a small gesture, but it says everything about how far these two men have come. They arrive back in the Bronx just as Tony's family gathers for Christmas Eve dinner. Tony walks in with his usual noise and energy, life and chaos following him through the door. Then Don appears in the doorway, alone, hesitant, uncertain if he even belongs here. For a beat, the room goes quiet, taking in this refined stranger standing in the cold. Then Tony's wife rises, crosses the room, and embraces him like family. She thanks him, quietly, for the beautiful letters he secretly helped write all those months. Don finally sits down at a table that asks nothing from him except his company. No stage, no spotlight, no invisible line between the front door and the back. Just two men, once strangers, now bound together by everything they survived on that road. The film closes on that note, warm light spilling from a Bronx apartment window. A reminder that walls built by others can still be broken down, one uncomfortable mile at a time.